everyone, it's Hailey, and today is Bookmas Day 7, so I'm going to be talking about 5 books that I read this year that surprised me and 5 books that I read this year that disappointed me. So the whole concept of today's video is that I really try to not have expectations when I go into books because it leads to some disappointment sometimes, or if I'm lucky, it can work out in my favor and I'll be surprised by a book. But as much as I try not to have these expectations, I usually do. I just can't help it. A book that surprises me is one that obviously I don't really go into not thinking I'm going to like, but what I mean by that is it ends up being something I like more than I thought I really would. I may have thought it would be a 3-star and it was a 4-star, or I thought it was going to be a 4-star and it was a 5-star. On the other hand, a book that disappointed me is one that I may have thought was a 5-star and was a 4-star, or a 4 and a 3. You get what I mean. The books that disappoint me are generally because I've heard great things about them from other people, or because I've read something by that author before that I liked more than the book that I was disappointed by. Why did that get so complicated? I just make everything complicated. I feel like you understand what surprise and disappointment means, so let's just get into the video. So I'm going to alternate throughout the video. I feel like that way we'll be positive and then we'll be negative and then we'll be positive again. So maybe it will keep the positive mood up. So I'm going to start on a happy note with a book that surprised me, and that would be The Prince and the Dressmaker by Wang. This surprised me for a couple of reasons. One of them being it's a graphic novel, and I haven't read a graphic novel in a really long time. Generally I don't enjoy graphic novels, but I guess it really depends because I liked this one a lot. The art style is beautiful. I love the color scheme, and it is set in France at the dawn of the modern age. So it's a very romantic fairy tale setting, and you follow a prince who loves dressing up in dresses, but he does that in secret. He dresses up as a girl, Lady Crystalia, and he ends up hiring a dressmaker who becomes his best friend, and it's about their relationship and what he's going through. It deals with gender identity, and it does so in a great way. I think it does it very, very well. Really, this was just a very cute and impactful story, and it gave me everything that I wanted and more. It was much more impactful than I was expecting. I had no clue what it was about going into it, but oh, it was so great. I loved it. It really warmed my heart. Next, a book that disappointed me is If I'm Being Honest by Emily Wibberly and Siegemund-Broka. You might remember me talking about Always Never Yours by this author duo. I loved it. It was a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and this is a Taming of the Shrew retelling. Now, I feel like Always Never Yours kind of went under the radar. There weren't that many people talking about it, but this book, on the other hand, I felt like was a lot more hyped up and there were a lot more people talking about it. So that got me excited, especially because I had enjoyed their previous book so much. But there was something about this story that just fell flat and didn't connect with me. The main character, Cameron, can be really bitchy, and obviously, I mean, it's a Taming of the Shrew retelling, so she goes around trying to tame herself and trying to make amends for all the things that she has done wrong, and she is trying to catch the attention of a boy, but she ends up kind of veering away from that boy towards another and is like, what is happening? It wasn't that storyline or the fact that Cameron was an unlikable character that didn't mesh with me, because I knew all of that going in. It was just something about it. I just couldn't connect on the level that I did their previous book, and I can't really explain why, but it was very unfortunate, and I wish I had enjoyed this one more, especially because I feel like a lot of people did, but I'm glad that people are being introduced to this author duo, and I hope that they will try Always Never Yours because I really liked that one. Next, another book that surprised me would be The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. So when I started reading adult romance, I pretty much went to the bookstore and looked for, one, all the ones with the pretty illustrated covers because I love those covers, and two, the ones that I had heard people talking about, the ones that I recognized the titles for. I didn't go into a lot of them knowing a lot, and this is one that I bought without knowing anything about it, and then I started it and I read the synopsis and I was like, I feel like this might be a little bit much for me because there's a certain level of smut that I can handle, and I felt like this was going to go past that. This follows the main character, Stella Lane, who is a character with autism spectrum disorder. It is an own voices story about that, which was a nice surprise. And Stella is very dedicated to her job. She loves it. She loves the algorithm. She loves basically math, honestly, which can't relate. But the one thing that she's never been able to figure out is dating and sex. So she hires a male escort to teach her all about that. So you can kind of see why I felt like it was going to be a little bit much going into it. Like the first, I feel like you're like 15 pages in and you get the first sex scene, maybe even before that, but it was actually a really adorable romance. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like super smutty books. books. It's just not my personal preference. I like more of the romantic side of things, and this definitely gave me that. It was really, really cute, and I was super into the characters and their story, and watching their romance blossom, it was just adorable. And I love the fact that families got involved. I loved seeing the family aspect of it, because I feel like a lot of times with romances, you don't get the families, and I like that. I don't know, it makes it feel more realistic to me. Honestly, I feel like this was the perfect amount of smut for me, so it was a very nice surprise. Now, on the topic of adult romance, an adult romance that disappointed me this year is unfortunately Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren. This is this author duo's latest book, and I have read pretty much all of their books now. I haven't read their Office romance series because that's kind of too smutty for me, and then I haven't read Dating You, Hating You yet, but other than that, I've read all of them, and I really, really love this author duo, like my favorite adult romance authors by far. So obviously when I heard they were coming out with a new book, I was like, yes, I need it. And I think what my problem with this book was the dual timeline. So I went into it not knowing much, and it's told from the first 100 pages or so, follow the characters when they are 18 and 21, I believe, and they kindle this romance over 2 weeks when they are spending in London. And then it ends up flashing to present day when the characters are much older. I think it's 14 years later, so they're definitely much older, and they end up reconnecting, and there was obviously something big that tore them apart. And I think that my issue was I got connected to the characters as their younger selves, so it was hard for me to reconnect with them when they were older, and the story was very, very angsty, and I like angst, but I like seeing the couple together too, and a lot of this you didn't get to see the couple together, so that kind of made me sad. I think this is just a different kind of romance, and it's one that I don't think I generally gravitate towards. Next, another book that surprised me is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. This I kind of compare to my experience with Undead Girl Gang, which I read last year. I expected them to be very like surface level, I don't know, just I didn't know if I would end up liking them, but I wanted to take a chance on them. And this actually was a pretty deep story at times. It's about witches in high school and like witches in a modern day setting, which was weird, but also very well done. And the main character is going through a breakup, and she still has to see her ex all the time, and she's trying to start a new relationship, and it goes through the difficulties of that, which was unique but very welcome. So I'm sitting here editing this video, and you can tell that I had been filming for 7 videos. This was the 7th video that I filmed on that day. I got up at 7 a.m. to film those videos. Actually, it's still that day and it's 2:30, and I'm finishing up editing these videos that I filmed today. But I just said well gum instead of well done. What? Oh my goodness. And it also has very great relationships throughout, and the main character, it features a female-female relationship. The story was a little bit cliche, but not too cliche. I think it did a lot of interesting different things, and overall, it was just a ton of fun to read. I felt like I was entertained the whole time. There was action throughout, whether it was like some high school drama there, but then also some witch action. I feel like there was a good balance of the two, and it just made for a great Halloween read. Next, another book that disappointed me is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So I did give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked this book, but this is a book that I feel like everyone was shouting from the high heavens about. Everyone was saying, you're gonna love it, like everyone loved it. And because of that, my expectations were so high. And I honestly tried my hardest to lower my expectations and go into it thinking that I wouldn't like it, so then I would hopefully be surprised by how much I would like it. But ultimately, it was just too much. Like, too many comments, too many people wanting me to read it, and that's why I think it ended up being a little bit of a letdown for me, just because I started off my year with reading this book. This was the very first book that I read in 2019, because I have this tradition where the first book that I read every year always ends up on my top 10 list of the year. It's not like intentional, it just happens. So I was like, so many people are telling me I'm gonna love this. I've heard endless good things about it, so obviously I'm probably going to love it. And I knew it was risky. I was nervous going into it, but I was like, I will take the chance and try and continue with this streak by reading this book. And unfortunately, it broke the streak. I mean, my top book of the year was still a book by this author, and it was close to being on the list because I enjoyed it a lot, but it just didn't quite make it. This is about old Hollywood. It features bisexual representation, and you follow the story of Evelyn Hugo, and it's once again kind of a tragic romance story, and it was very interesting. It was was honestly just the hype was too much. Speaking of my top 10 list, next for a book that surprised me, Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I did talk about this because it was on my top 10 books of the year list, but I didn't expect to enjoy this solely really because it's a sci-fi and I don't generally like sci-fi, but something about it, I just was like, I really want to read that book, and I'm glad that I did. It was so good. I think the sci-fi element was well done and everything was well explained. There were like diagrams and stuff too, which was very cool, and it was a good mix of being fun and action-packed at the same time, which made it a big success for me. Next for disappointment is The Forbidden Orchid by Sharon Biggs-Waller. The setup for this sounded like something I would love. It sounded very unique. It is set in Victorian times and it follows a character who her father is actually a flower hunter, but her father goes missing, so she takes off to China to try and find him. He was searching for this orchid that everyone is trying to find, and I so wanted to love this, and there were times that I did, but I think it just didn't live up to its full potential. It was really a cool historical concept. It was something I wasn't really aware of before, and there were elements of it that I think were done well and that I liked, but it just kind of went directions that I wasn't expecting, and the execution of it left me feeling a little bit bored. Finally, for a book that surprised me is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This one surprised me not because, I mean, I had heard some great things about it, so originally I was expecting to like it, but then I started listening to the audiobook last year and the audiobook wasn't working for me, so I decided to put it down, and then I decided to physically read it, and physically reading it, I enjoyed the story a lot. The setting was very cool. I love the fact that it's a kind of Sherlock Holmes mystery that has a historical element to it as well. There's a murder mystery that has been spanning across years and years, and then Stevie, the main character, comes with the mission to try and solve this mystery, and I thought that alternating time periods was interesting and added a lot to the story. And while there were some things that I was a little bit iffy on, overall, I thought it was very good. And the final book is, of course, a disappointment, so I feel like maybe we should have started on a negative note and then ended on a happy note, but oh well. But that is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. I talked about this in my last Bookmas video, so I'm not going to delve too far into it, but this is once again a case of something being very hyped up and just not living up to that potential. It was a very cool concept for a historical witch story. I was expecting a steamy sort of romance, and unfortunately that just wasn't what I ended up with, so that left me feeling very, very disappointed. Like, honestly, I wish I had loved that book as much as everyone else has, especially because the main character has my last name, so it just felt like it should have worked, but it didn't. So those are all of my surprises and disappointments of 2019. Please let me know what books you read this year that surprised or disappointed you. I would love to know. And don't forget to click that subscribe button, then click that bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post. I'm posting 21 videos over the course of December, so you don't want to miss any of that. And you can also follow all of my social media. All my handles and links and all that stuff will be down below for you guys as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!